I think the bigger challenge is workflow that needs to be adaptive. Because a lot of the workflow when you have people sitting around in an office environment, the workflow is kind of assumed within that space, and if the entire space is shrunk into just you and your device or devices, and then connected to the network and everybody else therefore remote, it changes how you have to do your processes. I think that's the biggest learning a lot of people had to go through, to use software to help them to make that happen. And if they've never done it when they were in the organization, in the office, I think that has been the problem. And I think that really is an issue. I think we have seen that in the schools, for example, when they had to do remote learning, and that completely changed the dynamics of how it was supposed to be done and the challenges they faced. So likewise, in SMEs and organizations smaller, I think that was the biggest problem. And what we have done from a Red Hat point of view is to support them in the sense that give them help in how can they go about doing what needs to be done. Not all of them require the help, but those who have reached out to us, we try and help them in the manner that makes sense to ensure that they are benefiting from ideas that we have ourselves benefited from over the last 25 years as an organization. How do you work remotely and be productive at the same time?
So Kevin, in your case, you've got about 500,000 businesses and a lot of households. Have they sort of been reaching out to try and get a better understanding of what they need to do?
Yeah, actually they do. We recently ran a survey. What we found was that I think that supports what Harish said, is that companies had to go through this transition, and they have to learn new methods of doing things that came naturally to them when they were all working in a co-located environment. And I think the communication is the biggest challenge, obviously. And so what we learned, for example, is that 53% of workers received a clear communication when they switched a remote setup. So basically half of the working population in our survey did not know exactly what to do, and they have to rely on themselves, or they have to rely on their peers. And I think this is what Harish is saying, that if this peer support becomes essential in many situations, because often the management themselves finds themselves in an unfamiliar situation, so they also don't necessarily know what they need to do at this moment.
There's a lot of learning involved in this, right? Suddenly, and especially since they were thrown in the deep end. I presume a lot of them are have kind of found their way, maybe. I mean, otherwise you're going to be very dysfunctional and ineffective as an organization, right?
One of the, in the conversations I've had, many others, is that they realized that there were things that they were doing when you were in a same physical space that perhaps you don't need to do that anymore. And that was a realization that was hard for some of these organizations to accept. And then there is this one whole group of individuals, the micromanagers, the over-the-shoulder type of management people, who suddenly didn't have their power base, as it were. And so they were going through a withdrawal symptoms of sort. No one to keep looking over the shoulder and say, why are you not doing this? So I think that was the other thing that probably made that group of individuals probably completely out of sync with everything else that they know from their life and world experience.
I think many would agree that the home network is usually less taken care of than it would be an enterprise network. There was this very long discussion in the security community that the perimeter is disappearing and workloads migrating to cloud, and you cannot do this old ways of security when you control the stuff at your perimeter. And it was slowly dissolving, and then suddenly there was this massive change that it happened like almost overnight. And like the perimeter was going, and then it was just gone. And I see that many organizations are simply not prepared for that from the security perspective. So I think that's a massive challenge.
So in terms of somebody sort of doing things at home, what are the basic things that they should have in place so that they continue to operate in a secure environment?
So there's a 3 pillars that you have here: is a collaboration, secure access, and securing the endpoint. This is what matters now.
We benefited from the fact that we have been doing remote for years. So we have all the necessary practices in place. Simple things like you're encrypting your laptops. When you boot up the machine, it is encrypted. So you have to decrypt your laptop before you can actually use it. And you connect to the network, to the corporate network through a VPN. And you have all the necessary 2-factor authentication. And so, we have been doing that as a norm. So from our perspective, there was no change at all. And again, it goes back to what Kevin said, it is the endpoint that you want to secure, not the rest of it. So in other words, you bring the perimeter around your endpoint. And I think a lot more people are getting the sense of it. I think the early days, if we were telling them, oh, you should secure, you should have VPN access, you should do this, you should do that, there was no hurry for that.
So what do you think some of the people who are working at home are doing wrong?
Now, those people are working from home, and if they receive a phishing emails, and if they misclick, I mean, we all know from the statistics that despite all efforts and it's also my personal experience, that despite all efforts on the anti-phishing training, a carefully constructed spear phishing email that is tailored to your organization, that is tailored to your personal history, maybe, like if attackers did some research on you, it has a very good chance to make you click. With people working from home, and like even average quality phishing emails have an industry average success rate between 15 and 25%, depending on the organization and organizational maturity.
How much money do you think all this phishing makes for them?
Garmin paid $10 million for the attack. So, which basically means that for the criminal out there, one successful attack is probably gonna be enough for them to do the early retirement. That's how much money is in there. So I think there is like literally millions, maybe billions now.
In your report, it says that 92% of global companies surveyed had to adopt new technologies to work remotely. So that's a great level of unpreparedness on the part of companies, isn't it?
Yes, it is there.
Yeah.
Whether they like it or not, they were not prepared. Majority of them were not prepared. I mean, it's no surprise, but it is unfortunate they had to go into the deep end of the pool in order to, in some ways clean out the unpreparedness.
I think the world was thrown in the deep end with this one, right? I mean, nobody kind of expected COVID to hit with such suddenness and such ferocity. So we've all been kind of caught out because I think everybody thought, okay, we've got a bit of time, there's a bit of a runway, and suddenly that got cut off. And what are they saying? Is it 5 years worth of digital development was suddenly crammed into this space or something like that?
Yeah, probably 10 years worth of stuff happened in a couple of weeks.
The people had to learn new ways of communicating. And I think here, the leadership plays a big role. Like when this situation started, for example, our CEO had bi-weekly all-hand calls, and at some point we had even the weekly all-hand calls in all geographies, just to inform people about the change, about what we are doing about it, what are the next steps, how people need to prepare themselves, what they need to do, how this affects the whole organization, things like that, like the communication from the top of the company to everyone directly.
As much as possible, you have to develop skills with the customer, because sometimes customers aren't able to explain clear enough what it is that they require help with, because sometimes it's just the face-to-face seeing each other. So things like video conferencing tools are very helpful in making that happen. But at the same time, not missing the point about being, trying to be very clear, being precise, being able to describe a problem or ask for a solution, being more precise. I think that level is still not there yet, but I think that is what more people are beginning to appreciate. I should be able to describe what I require rather than, you come here, let's talk about it, and so on. And just to add on to that a little bit, one of the things from a more how we adapted from being online and doing stuff remotely is that we change our work scheme, the way we do stuff. For example, when we have meetings, even with customers, we say, look, we will block out 1 hour, but we will only deal with the first half hour to get to whatever it is. So get to the point very quickly. No, deviations, no meandering of a topic to get to a point. And then at the end of the half hour, we kind of wrap up everything so that you free up the remaining half hour as much as possible so that you've got time to take a breath, do whatever it is, because chances are the next one starts at the top of the hour again.
Meetings are getting more expensive in terms of the effort and in terms of the emotional and mental commitment. It's just harder for to do this over the video conference. So it is now necessarily for people who organize those meetings to put an agenda. Like, this is a basic tip. I totally agree that it's extremely important. And the second thing is also another tip from my side here. I start asking my team and my peers to make meeting minutes in internal wiki instead of sending them as a follow-up email. And there is a reason for that. The reason for that is that because there are that many meetings, like, that go back to back often. I don't know how many I have in my calendar. Probably I have 7, 8 calls today. And many of them are back to back. So some people sometimes just cannot attend all of them, even if they want to. So they need to find a way to read those meeting minutes. And in emails, sometimes those emails get lost. And we also feel that email is not a storage media, it's a communication media. So if you want something to persist, and if you want to have a follow-up, you need to put it in a document that is available to everyone in your organization, ideally. So in our case, internal wiki pages work.
In our case, for example, when we have meetings, there is a shared document open at that time where all of us attending the meeting have access to that. And so that becomes the place where the minutes are actually taken in real time. So at the end of the half hour, you pretty much have the minutes done. So I can see what I said or someone said, and when I'm not speaking and someone is speaking, and I can then take the notes and I can be the person. So we rotate among ourselves who's the one taking. It's not saying, oh, now can you take the notes? It's just okay, you're talking, I'll take over, I do that. It's just by eye contact because on a conference call. It becomes very easy for me to just take over and do it, or the other person take over when I'm speaking, so that we are consistent. And at the end, when it is all said and done, after the half hour, oh, okay, we got all the minutes, that job done.
Well, Kevin and Harish, thank you so much for your insights and your inputs and your thoughts about what's taking place and what's to come. The world is we've been rocked around, so we'll just have to see how it settles at the end of it and what sort of path we're going to be taking. But it's good to know that certain things need to be in place, being secure, being able to operate in a way where we can still be effective and efficient and still contributing to the larger cause, whatever that may be. I think there'll be a lot of changes also. Jobs will be lost, industries will change. So we will need that agility and ability to make changes on the fly sometimes.